Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business, you'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
Welcome to 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal. I'm your host, Brian Slagel. I am the CEO of Metal Blade Records. You can learn more about that at metalblade.com. You can also follow me, by the way, on social media at Brian Slagel on Instagram, Facebook, X, all the other ones, pretty much there. Also follow this podcast, 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal, at all the same similar podcast entities. You can listen to it. And of course, on social media, we're everywhere as well. Anyway, the next time you're in Las Vegas, or if you currently live in Las Vegas or the Las Vegas area, you need to visit the Metal Blade Museum. Now, not only are there artifacts from Metal Blade artists like Metallica, Slayer, Cannibal Corpse, Gwar, Lizzie Borden, there's also artifacts from bands that we had something to do with as well, like Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, Alice in Chains, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Alice Cooper, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really great metal museum. It's located right near the Strip in Las Vegas. Also, our retail store is also now in the museum. So you can go pick up your Metal Blade vinyl, CDs, collectibles, shirts, all sorts of cool stuff. Just go to metalblade.com/museum for all the details. And we are into the final 10 songs. That's right. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. Again, we're not counting them down, but we are posting a whole bunch of really good songs, and especially with all the excitement going on with the Rush reunion shows, which if you've not seen them, they are incredible. I've seen it twice now, and it's been spectacular. I'm looking to see it a few more times, hopefully. So we got to talk about Rush. We're going to talk about the great song Spirit of Radio. We've got our good friend Jay Ruston, a fellow Canadian, to talk about the production of it. And my good friend JT the Brick, legendary sports talk radio guy who's seen Rush a lot. And we'll talk to him about the song. But as always, we begin with another Canadian person, Mr. Martin Popoff.
Great choice, Brian. Rush, the Spirit of Radio, often called Spirit of the Radio. Used to drive Neil Lalonde nuts when he would hear that. Anyways, the Spirit of Radio, This is on Permanent Waves, the band's 7th album, January 14th, 1980, produced by Terry Brown. They are back at Le Studio. You know, after recording in England, these big, complicated albums at Rockfield. We got a Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres. But yeah, they're at Le Studio, this iconic stomping ground of Canadian bands and some international bands that is no longer there, north of Montreal. They get an amazing, amazing sound on this record, especially Neil's toms. Everybody sounds great. Geddy is singing amazing on this song. This is a big hit song for the band. And it's a big hit song for the band doing what they love most, being a very, very complicated progressive metal band. So it's different than Fly By Night and Closer to the Heart in that manner. Even different than Working Man, I suppose. You've got that crazy syncopated intro to open the song. It's very kind of non-intuitive. Reminds you of, you know, the conundrum of doing Led Zeppelin rock and roll, or even Hot for Teacher somewhat. I mean, that's one that people keep scratching their head over. But yeah, this is a big, grand, complex thing to open the song. Yeah, what they've discovered on this album, and this song is the perfect metaphor for that, is they can make a very user-friendly song that still challenges people. It's very, rhythmically daunting throughout. There's many, many parts on this, and yet they squeeze it into a short song. So it's very different from what you got on the last 4 albums, really, and even somewhat Fly By Night. This is a song that, once you hear it, it's got there's so much enthusiasm and well-wishing melodies on it. The verse has that, beautiful, rainy, arpeggiated playing from Alex. And the vocals, of course, this is a tribute to, north of Toronto, northwest of Toronto radio station in Brampton there, CFNY, that played a lot of cool, challenging stuff. My good buddy Ivor Hamilton was part of that. It's a great song to play on radio because it's just a beautiful tribute to radio. It really does give you those warm and fuzzy feelings about the magic of listening to radio and knowing there's lots of other people listening at the same time to these songs. You've got the radio channel flipping sort of feature on it at 3:36. You've got the reggae part at the end. So this is where people started talking in a big way about Rush and, including some reggae things later on in dribs and drabs through some of the later albums. Stuart Copeland's kind of a part of that as well. But yeah, this is, you've got that splash, the splash cymbal part from Neil that everybody loves with that, your honesty, and all that. There's a lot of great lines in here that everybody remembers. As Alex says, I just wanted to give it something that gave it a sense of static, radio waves bouncing around, very electric. We had that sequence going underneath, and it was just really to try get something that was sitting on top of it that gave it that movement. Typical kind of a Rob Halford talk from Alex there. I mean, he captures the sense of it. Like I say, I think this is one of the most beloved songs in the entire Rush catalog, more so than even Tom Sawyer. And like I say, I think it's because it's Rush making something that somehow the masses could grab onto, but still is just very foreign to them because it's so complex. So many parts in this song for a short song, and yet they're just cheerful and easy to love and easy to assimilate in your head after a few listens, even if you are a quote-unquote normie kind of thing. So it's a very, very progressive metal song. It is heavy, it is bubbly, it is very electric. It's a good, loud song, which is a power trio type song, and just beautifully, beautifully put together. So again, this is the album where the 3 guys, I think, all felt the shared narrative that they seem to be getting better at writing what people call a good song, rather than just be too out and out purely progressive and letting things kind of go on too long. So I think it's the Plant the Flag, maybe the greatest achievement in the entire Rush catalog for all of these many reasons. Rush, the spirit of radio.
Wow, some very impressive words from Martin Popoff. I like it. So it's always good to hear from him. And he's a fellow Canadian. Rush is Canadian, of course. So always good to hear from him and good stuff. Thanks, Martin.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, gravis or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases. Unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online. And a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business. You'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
Yet again, as we wind down, we're into the last 10 songs of this podcast, but don't worry, there will be another podcast I'm involved with. It'll be similar, but a little bit different, which you'll hear about fairly soon. Anyway, we bring back our old friend, Mr. Jay Ruston, one of the greatest producers of all time, to talk production on his fellow Canadian band, Rush. Spirit of Radio.
Of all time. Wow. I'm extremely honored. Thank you. Yes, Permanent Waves, Spirit of Radio. I have so much to say. Recorded at Le Studio Morin Heights, Quebec, the first time they actually recorded at Le Studio, and then stayed there for pretty much a decade. There's a couple spots where they didn't go there, but they did spend most of the 80s there. This record started in 1979 after Hemispheres, of course, and it was the only record at Le Studio on their Trident A-Range console, which is now sitting 2 miles away from me in Van Nuys at Elliott Smith's studio before he passed. So I've gone in there and touched it and used it and recorded a band called Nerf Herder on there. That was an experience. What a beautiful console. No phantom power, so if you wanted to use any condenser mics, you had to use external power. But what a console, what a sound. I was just having a conversation about the sound of Rush records with Mike Portnoy and Charlie Benante because of all the Rush excitement with Annika and the touring and whatnot. And of course, we've all seen the show now, and we're all stoked that they're out there. But this record in particular, I love the sound of, and the drums especially. Moving Pictures, of course, is like the record everybody talks about. This record sounds better. It's fatter, it's thicker. The snare drum on Moving Pictures is kind of thin and a bit kind of stereo-y, like too much overhead mics or something. This record, it still sounds like a 70s Rush record. It's got that punch. The snare drum's right there. The bass, it doesn't sound 80s, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. But they just had such a great time making this record because they had spent a lot of time in Wales making records. Smaller studio, 2112 was done at Toronto Sound, and I think they did 2 or 3 records in a row in Wales at Rockfield. So now you're home, you're back in Canada, you're not far from home, cabin in the woods, sleeping, next to a lake. How great. Spent a few months in the middle of the mountains of Quebec making history, basically. And damn, does this record sound fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love the sound of this record. I prefer this over Moving Pictures. I like Moving Pictures, but
me too. Songs as well.
Yeah, I don't like all of Moving Pictures. I like some of it, obviously, but the whole thing, I prefer this one. I mean, I like the earlier stuff better than even this, but it's still a Rush record. This is in their kind of transformation from being a really progressive band with all sorts of crazy stuff to kind of moving to the more, I don't want to say radio friendly, but they kind of became a radio friendly band of all crazy things. And then beyond with the keyboards and all that weirdness that I wasn't a big fan of. But this is a good record because it's kind of that, like I said, that stepping stone to, obviously, as you mentioned, the next one being really big. And I've always just loved this song because it's also, I don't play guitar, but I know that guitar part that begins this is not easy to play.
No, and if you watch the Rick Beato interview with Alex, he shows him how to play it, which pedals he used, the Electric Mistress flanger to get that opening sound, and just iconic riff. Even people who don't know Rush know this song. To me, this is just as popular as Tom Sawyer in a way on album rock radio anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But it just sounds phenomenal. And this song is very progressive. Like the whole intro is impossible to play.
Yeah.
like I've seen so many people try and play it and just butcher it. And, even for them, I'm sure it's hard to play. But what a complicated, beautiful song.
Yeah, it's interesting. And obviously, smart to call it the spirit of radio, because the radio people probably love that. So, hey, let's put it on the radio now. But you're right. It's underneath it. If you peel back the layers a little bit, it's a very complicated song and a very progressive song. And all three of them are playing incredible parts that all kind of work together somehow at some high level. And then, the lyrics and the music and, the way Geddy sings. Of course, everybody makes fun of the salesman thing at the end there.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought that was pretty cool, actually. But yeah,
I love his vocal on this song.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And the whole song is really great, too. It's which is another reason why it's a legendary song and definitely fits in with 100 songs that define heavy metal.
Absolutely. And the whole middle breakdown where they're basically ripping off the Police who were ripping off reggae is brilliant. And, they were tipping their hat to their peers, which I thought was pretty cool. And then the outro, when you've got the piano, the ding, 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 and I love that now live, since they have a keyboard player, when they play the outro, the piano's there. It was one thing they would never reproduce live because they never put anything on tape. They never played the tracks. Geddy couldn't play that part with his feet, and he's clearly playing bass. So we never heard that piano part live. And now seeing them, in 2026, you're going to hear that piano part at the end, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I was really happy when I saw them live. I was like, wow, this is way better than I thought. Plus, the set lists are incredible. They're playing most of the stuff that I want to hear, and that extra guy really does help. I mean, vocally helps Geddy a little bit, and all the extra keyboard parts that are there. It sounds more like the complete Rush songs that they are.
Sure, I've watched literally hundreds of YouTube videos at this point of the new sets and shows, and I've watched entire shows, and I've seen the show in person twice, thanks to you on one of them, by the way. And my first impression was Annika's incredible, and I love the way she played this song, but she's most definitely doing her own thing, and the drum snobs will definitely nitpick everything she's doing and all the little things, but I'll just say this, wouldn't happen without her. They weren't interested in hiring anyone else. It's the only way this was going to work was with her. So when they played this song especially, I actually really liked the way she plays.
Well, the thing about her, and obviously we've discussed this, and all of us Rush fans have discussed it kind of ad nauseum. But the thing that works, and in addition to Neil being an incredible drummer, obviously, those three had a chemistry, and it just worked. And I don't think you can recreate that chemistry with really anybody. But with her, they have a lot of that same chemistry. And you're right, she's not playing everything exactly the way Neil played. I mean, nobody can. It's inhuman. Right. Even these great drummers can't play it perfectly. But she's doing a really...
To remember all of it too, 40 songs.
I know, because they're mixing the songs around too. It's crazy. But she fits in perfectly with them, and you can tell that they're having fun playing. You've got to have fun. And I think the whole thing really works way better than I thought it was going to. So yeah, I'm happy they're doing it, and I'm happy it's doing well. And
it's getting better too. If you watch them, I was at the very first show. I had to be to feel the emotion in the room. And especially when they played Spirit of Radio, it was just oh my God. Because you and I were at the final show in 2015, and I had video of the last time they ever played Spirit of Radio. I was the obnoxious guy who held up my phone to get the invisible airwaves. I had to document it because I figured it was the end. Yeah. To see them do it again, it brought a tear to my eye, and she just played it so great. But now just watching the progression of this song and all the other songs, she really is starting to dig in a little deeper and get more comfortable with it. And so I have nothing but positive things to say about it. But anyway, back to the actual album version. I love the way the drums sound on this recording, especially Free Will, and just the punchiness of the snare and everything on this whole record. The Trident console, maybe that had something to do with it. I'm sitting in front of Trident right now. It's, I love them. Whether or not that made a difference, because Moving Pictures is the first record they did on the SSL. Le Studio was the first North American studio to get an SSL in 1981, one of the early G series, and they're fantastic consoles. I think that studio's in Georgia now at Tree Studios, so it's still alive and making music, thankfully. But yeah, I love the thickness of this record. It still sounds like 70s Rush to me.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm a big fan of it. It's like I said earlier, it's the kind of the stepping stone to where they would go after this. But yeah, I love the production. I have very little to say on it other than it sounds great. And of course, we discussed Terry Brown before. I've always been a big fan, and we got the incredible opportunity to work with him on a few records, and he was unbelievable. Just a great person and a great producer, and you could see why all of these people had a great relationship back in the day. And that certainly, being in the studio and enjoying yourself and having fun, is going to create a good environment. The better the environment in the studio is, usually the better the records are going to be. There are some weird bands that like tension, but most of the time that's not a good. Yeah, most of the time that's not a good thing. You want everyone to have fun, and
I've had enough of that.
You could kind of tell though that the vibes here were really good. Even the cover, the girl smiling on the cover.
Yeah, the artwork's fantastic. And one thing I will say about Rush records in this era, go back 2 records, go ahead 2 records. Geddy's bass sound very consistent across all those records. Yes. Even Neil's drum sound pretty consistent from, I'd say, Hemispheres to about Signals. Very similar snare sound. Signals, I think, is the pinnacle of his kick and snare sound. Really, and Charlie will agree with me on that as well. But the guitar sound, Alex constantly evolved. And of course, you go back to 20 and 12, it's just a 335 into a Marshall or a Hi-Watt. Very simple, few pedals. But this record in particular, the guitar sound and his rhythm sound on Spirit Radio, it's got this weird, like, boxy mid-range thing. And I say that in a good way. It's so unique. And clearly they've never reproduced it live. He doesn't use that tone live. He does for the intro, for the lick. But once the song starts, it's just sort of he's using like a stock heavy tone live. But if you really listen to the sound on the record, I don't know if it was like an AC30 or something. I'd be just super curious to know, because it's such a unique guitar sound.
Yeah, and they, that was one of their, especially Alex, probably more than anybody else. Like, he was constantly kind of redoing his guitar sound over the years. I mean, he had to when the keyboards came in. I mean, he's talked about it where he's like, I had to kind of fit in, so I played like a different style and a different, a louder, cleaner guitar to get in there, which makes sense. I'm not a huge fan of the keyboard era of Rush, but this era is the classic era, obviously, and they're doing everything at a high level. And it's an amazing song, and everything about it was really great.
You feel the joy in it because they're essentially at home, as in recording in Canada, not far from their families. It's a very peaceful environment up at Le Studio, or was before it sadly burned down. But you're in the middle of the forest, and it's nice and quiet. And just, can you imagine, like, back then, you get $250,000 to make a record. You could take your time, spend months agonizing over it and just having a great time. So few bands get to do that now, if ever. And I've been fortunate to make a few records in that way, but it's few and far between.
Yeah, and plus, you got to go back to the day. I mean, there's no internet. There's not a lot. There's probably in Quebec there might have been 1 or 2 English TV channels if they were lucky, and there's no distractions. So literally, you're in there. Eat, sleep, and make music. That's really all you could do up there. So that kind of focus and attention, I think, was really helpful too, because there's like zero distractions.
Yeah, I think they smoked a lot of weed, had a lot of wine. I know they had I think it was a volleyball or a badminton outside set up on the grass next to the lake. I'm sure they did a lot of boating and swimming. Like, just that type of environment, it's going to make you make a great record. They spent a lot of time in pre-production on this record as well, because after the Hemispheres tour, which was just like beat them to death, basically, they took almost 2 months off and just didn't do anything, which at that time bands just didn't do.
Yeah, back then that's a long time.
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks was a very long break, and they reconvened and started writing songs on a farm near Toronto, and then they actually went into a studio in Toronto and recorded the record essentially in like demo form. So by the time they got to Le Studio, it was pretty much ready to go. They just had to hit record and nail their tones and get great takes.
Yeah, that's always the best way to do it. Although the only problem with making demos is some people get what they call demo-itis, and they want to. They like the sound of the demos better. We've dealt with that a couple of times. We're like, no, the demos are better. It's like, no, the recording is better. But
it's tough because sometimes the energy is what they're hearing and feeling. And I've said to people, you know what?
Correct.
Use the demo. either remix it or just put it out as if it's not there, and then they don't want to hear that. No, that's not what I mean. I'm like, well, then don't bring it up.
Exactly right. Well, it's another classic record. And again, absolutely deserving to be in the 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal podcast.
Oh, yes.
And thank you again, Mr. Jay Ruston. Always appreciate you coming in here and giving us all sorts of good information.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. We'll see you soon.
Hey, everyone. Do you like quizzes? Do you like Metal Blade? Do you like trivia? Well, if you like all of those three, Metal Mondays is for you. Every Monday, we put out a new quiz that you guys can go in and answer the questions. You can win prizes. You can get discounts, all sorts of really fun stuff. Metallica is doing it, and now Metal Blade is doing it as well. Go to metalblade.com, search for it there, Metal Mondays, and check it out.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business, you'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
We welcome in, he won the first ever Smack Off on the Jim Rome Show. He's turned that into a 30-year radio career, more than 30-year radio career, which is still going strong today. He also works for the Las Vegas Raiders, and he's seen Rush many times. You know him as JT the Brick. How are you, sir?
Well, my friend, I'm doing great. It's an honor to talk to you. We've been trying to do this for a while. Raider training camp just opened, and the Golden Knights, where you spent a lot of time, ended their run for the Cup, and we're able to fit each other in, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I appreciate you fitting this in because I know it's crazy for the NFL right now. So, first of all, you picked Spirit of Radio by Rush. Let me know your thoughts on why you picked this specific song.
Because it had such a impact on my life. As you introduced me, I've seen Rush 54 times. And by the time I was 16 or 17, and I started seeing Rush, all the shows, a lot of them back east, Brendan Byrne Arena, Madison Square Garden, the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, when they opened with Spirit of Radio, and they opened with it, and they did that a lot, it really was probably the most energy and the happiest I've ever been in my life as a rock fan, progressive rock fan, just overall rock fan. To hear that song with the energy from a trio, digitally perfect, and it's been one of my top favorite songs of my whole life.
Yeah, it's an amazing track, and that I don't play any instrument, but I also know that opening lead that Alex plays is really, really difficult to play.
It is, and it just has this opening that grabs you. You know, I'm a big believer of a band, great iconic bands, opening with an iconic song and ending with an iconic song. Even if they have a new record, something that's really good. I go see the Stones a lot, but sticking with Rush, I mean, Rush has an unbelievable library. You're seeing that on this new tour, which is getting rave reviews. I mean, they opened up with Xanadu. in LA. I mean, that's way off the charts. But I think if you go to Spirit of Radio and you open it, Tom Sawyer's not an opener. Red Barchetta's not an opener. And they have a few that are iconic. And I think right there on their Mount Rushmore at number one or close to it is Spirit of Radio.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating song because musically it's very difficult. All three of them are playing all sorts of crazy parts and different parts. Geddy's on the bass, and of course Alex's stuff, his lead in this song is incredible. Then you move to the lyrics, which of course Neil wrote, which are fascinating to me. I've always been fascinated by this because most of it's kind of a joyous, I love listening to the radio and how great the radio is, but then he fits in some of the digs on the music business in there, which he does it so well that it's kind of perfect.
It still amazes me knowing the library of knowledge that Geddy Lee has, from his baseball collection to his bass collection to his just history of Europe coming from his family, that he wasn't more of a lyricist. And Neil wrote the lyrics to these songs before Geddy and Alex would come in and drop in their tremendous music behind it. And to this day, I never wondered why. Geddy wasn't the lyrical voice of Rush, and we know how great Neil was well-read and traveled, and his motorcycle tours and everything that he's seen in life and how he was able to write these iconic lyrics. But amazing way they put music together. I've never seen a band like it do it that way.
Agree 100%. I think if you could read Geddy's book, which is a phenomenal book, by the way, and he talks about that. And I think Neil just really wanted to write lyrics. And I think he was so good at it that it was like, okay, well, this guy knows what he's doing and he's really good at it. So we'll just let him write the lyrics.
Yeah. And I've been reading Geddy's book. I'm almost done with it. I did a staycation in Vegas 2 weeks ago and I knocked out about another 100 pages to it. But then it got 114 and the glue in the book was melting. And I had to cover 2 towels over it when I was at one of the casino resort properties. But yeah, the lyrics, the music, Alex being one of the greatest guitar players I've ever seen live. I just saw Angus again, and Angus is a rock guitar player, and everyone from Stevie Ray Vaughan, who I've seen. I was lucky enough to see the great Randy Rhoads play before he passed, and Alex is so underrated as a guitar player. Geddy's a bass god, Mount Rushmore of all time, and I've always think Neil is number one when it comes to rock drumming. To see them put it together, but you still got to have lyrics and songs if you're going to be famous, right? You know that.
Well, yeah, that's why it works. You have 3 incredible musicians that are doing really interesting lyrics, and it just all works perfectly, which is why they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and legendary band and back out on the road now. So speaking of that, you've seen them 54 times. I mean, I know why I love to go see bands, but I'm in the industry. So why do you want to see Rush as many times as you can?
Because it's brought me back to my best friend who I saw most of the shows with. It brought me back to the greatest years of my life. And I still, all these runs before Neil passed and the runs that they had, starting to see them from 18 through 50, and I just turned 60, seeing them twice a year for 20 years, and then sometimes 3 times a year, and there were other times 4 or 5 when I was in college. Whenever they came through the tri-state area in New York, I got 3 or 4 shows under my belt in one tour. Then I lived out west for years. So when they came to San Diego and played the Sports Arena or LA or Northern California where I've seen them, it's been really easy to see Rush. But what's changed it was obviously Vegas, because Rush loved coming to Vegas. They would play the MGM Grand, and they'd come by every year, and we'd get a chance to see them there. So the volume of shows I'm really proud of. I'm really struggling to get on this tour because I was going to Dallas and Geddy got laryngitis and I lost the show. I'm seeing him in San Jose and hopefully Fort Lauderdale. And then there's rumors of another show that could be happening. So I'm going to catch him a lot. But back to your question, it just brought me back to a point in my life where I was so excited the day of the show, the night before the show, the pre-party. Where were we going before? When we were going to get in? Who's opening? And then just to see the tour and guess the set list and then experience with my friends the train rides in, the nightlife afterwards. It's been the soundtrack of my life, Brian. That's why it's so important to me. It's the soundtrack of my entire life.
And where did you come in on Rush? Where did you first hear about them, or first hear them, I guess?
Yeah, I was in high school. I graduated high school in Long Island, New York, Farmingdale High School in 83. And when I was growing up as a kid and I started getting into music, I went through every phase. I went through Southern rock, which I really gravitated to. Charlie Daniels, Leonard Skinner, Molly Hatchet. I really dove into that, which I loved a lot. And I loved hard rock and just classic rock and roll. The Who. The Who had a big arc in my life too. And then metal. I jumped into metal, not all of it, but some of the metal that I ended up liking early on, from Sabbath and Ozzy and some of the other iconic metal bands, Metallica. But Rush was just different to me because I love Geddy. And a lot of people struggled with Geddy's voice and how Geddy hit certain notes. And it was good by me. And I just loved the songs and the library of it. So when I started seeing him in high school, I just never let up. I went to college in upstate New York at Geneseo, which is between Rochester and Buffalo. So I saw him at the Rochester War Memorial, to the Buffalo Auditorium, and then I would come downstate to see him. So it was a very big Northeast thing for me, Brian. It wasn't a Bay Area thing, which my life gravitated to. It was a really big Western New York, Central New York thing for me.
Yeah, and coming from Toronto, they were fairly close by. We definitely have to touch on the Geddy thing because it's a really interesting thing to me. Like, I get it. I love King Diamond. I like a lot of crazy vocals. Specifically this song, I know a lot of people make fun of the salesman thing that he does at the end, but I think it's just brilliant. The whole song is really good. So what was the first Rush album or song you heard?
Yeah, I probably jumped into, 2112 and Caress of Steel. I heard all of that, but the Impact Rush, like most Rush fans, I was really moved by Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures. If you can kind of just surround my life with those two, that's where I think they were more commercially successful, more radio alert. The band was really hitting their own stride. I loved the work they were doing in studio and how those songs came together. I could go on a deep dive with Rush. Some of their modern stuff didn't really hit the chord with me. But if you look at that time period of the 80s, when you saw and listened to Spirit of Radio, reading the liner notes, and then Moving Pictures, so commercially successful, those two albums I really enjoyed. Some would say that was more of the commercial side of Rush. I could care less. I just loved it. Both albums were like a greatest hits album to me.
Yeah, I mean, both amazing. But the thing that I'm fascinated by, especially listening to this song again, is it's not really a radio song, even though it is a big hit on radio. It's like very complicated. There's a lot of different changes, which is Rush is known for, of course. There's a chorus to it, but I'm listening to it. I go, this isn't something you would peg as like, okay, that's going to be a hit on the radio, but it is.
It's what moves you. When you go to a Rush show, if you're going to dive into any big song, Bytor and the Snow Dog, Temples of Syrinx, you're going to go into 2112. You're going on these deep, deep dives. La Via is one of the greatest live songs I've ever seen. And that takes you on a journey. We mentioned, the depth of what they can do with certain songs and how they can mix it into a record, let alone a show. But when they got to Tom Sawyer, when they played Red Barchetta, when they played some of the popular songs that everyone in the building were waiting for, they always delivered. And then, Subdivisions, when I heard Subdivision, it connected with me. As a high school kid, not growing up in Toronto, not going to Toronto until I was in college, I can envision that car ride through the suburbs of Toronto, saying, oh my God, I've made that car ride 1,000 times in the suburbs of Massapequa and Farmingdale and Huntington, Long Island. That was my youth.
Yeah, absolutely. So of the 54 shows you've seen so far, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I do. Radio City Music Hall. It's a good quick story. I was in college and we had tickets to Radio City with Blue Oyster Cult and Rush. And it was a big show. And we road trip. We didn't tell our parents. Obviously, I wasn't, because I lived in New York, but I was 7 hours away. And I wouldn't dare tell my mom and dad that I was coming down to see Rush. And we ended up seeing him, I think, twice. Radio City, we saw him in Jersey. I got to look at the tour back then. But we got there and we were hanging out in New York City, and I reach in my pocket and I don't have the tickets. And I'm like, oh my God, I left the tickets. I left the tickets in my dorm. And I called my roommate and he goes, yep, they're right here on your desk. I go, unbelievable. I go, do me a favor, read me the serial numbers on the ticket, that classic ticket stub at the bottom. There was a 13-digit number. And I read it and wrote it down. And I went to the box office 4 hours before the show, got someone there, a woman. She looked at it. She wrote it down. She went away for a while. My heart was in my chest. And all of a sudden they came out and they had the 2 tickets for us. And it was really a beautiful story. And then I remember someone was strumming a guitar, a 12-string outside on the outskirts of Radio City, and to give it to Alex. And it got to Alex, and Alex had it on stage for the show that night. It kind of tied that together, which was really deep. And then I'll never forget when they came out, we were sitting in the 4th or 5th row, Alex side, and we weren't supposed to be sitting there, but we had good seats. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget this. The show started, the lights dropped, and me and Jimmy took a step up, got out of the seats, and just walked 3 feet to the front, put our arms on the front of the stage, and watched that whole Radio City show in the front row. And most of the time I went and saw Rush for the early years. I was rail riding. I was up front. That was back in the day where you could leave your seat 10 rows back and go to the front. So I loved seeing them very up close.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I've done that before where I forgot tickets, and it's like, that's the worst feeling on the planet for sure. Well, glad you got in, and it's an amazing show with both Bloister Cult and Rush. That's pretty incredible. So I'm going to pivot a little bit from music for a second because I have 2 other important things I want to talk to you about. So as people know on this podcast, or they don't know, I'm a huge Jim Rome fan. I have been since he basically first started in San Diego, and it's like 4 million years ago. And I was a big fan of you calling in, and like I mentioned earlier, you won the first ever Jim Rome Smack Off. Where did you find Jim?
I found Jim when I was a stockbroker. I moved out west to San Diego, and that was in the late 80s, like 89, 90. And I wasn't a big sports talk guy in New York. I wasn't listening to Mike and the Mad Dog, local stuff. I was working. And then I got out west, and the time change for being a stockbroker was in the morning. And I started listening to this radio station, the Mighty 690. And Lee Hacksaw Hamilton was on, and a guy named Steve Hartman and Chet Forty. And then I started hearing Jim Rome, and it went right through me. I was like, this is great, because it was the birth of smack talk. I was a smack talker, and I became a caller, and I became a really good caller, and I had a specialty. I was calling in on pretty much just New York sports, the Yankees or the Knicks. And that's when the Knicks were going to the finals or Eastern Conference finals and losing. They just won their first title in 53 years. Let's go back to 94. I'm calling Rome, 92, 93. And he calls me JT the Brick, because I was JT from La Jolla, but he changed it to the Brick because the Knicks were shooting bricks. They were missing baskets and shooting themselves out. So he'd be like, here comes the Brick. And I'd come in and call. And then I got invited to compete in his first ever Smack Off, and I won. And if I didn't win, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be working for the Raiders. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have met you. We wouldn't be having this conversation. It was really the big early arc of my life professionally on radio that opened up a whole bunch of doors for me.
So before that, you never wanted to be a radio guy or a talk show person on the radio at all? You were just going to be a stockbroker?
No interest. I could care less about it until I listened to Rome and Hacksaw back out west, until I heard it the way I liked it. I didn't like New York sports talk in general. I didn't listen to a lot of it, but it was very loud and angry and intense and people screaming. When I listened to Rome, it was theater of the mind. We have a mutual friend who passed away, who I wrote my book about, The Handoff, a gentleman by the name of Andrew Ashwood. He was very big on theater of the mind. And what Jim should go down in history for is Jim was the guys who made the callers want to get on and be prepared. I just did a radio show today, and some of the calls just sucked. Like, people didn't care. They weren't prepared. They wanted to talk about training camp. They didn't have their call together. What I learned when I was calling into Jim Rome, my call was a piece of, it was like lyrics, as we were talking about. I was thinking about a call that was going to have a beginning, middle, and end. Because if you didn't have a beginning and a middle, Rome would have hung up on you before you got to the end. So it was survival of the fittest. And when I won that first Smack Off, I deserved it. I beat a lot of other really good callers who were my friends. And that led me to co-hosting the Pete Rose Show, getting into syndication, and that started it all.
It's crazy. I remember that because I was a fan. I remember you calling in all the time. I didn't have the guts to call in. I never called in. I think the only thing I ever did was I did win a huge Facts of the Day once, and then it became completely surreal to me. You know, since he's been on X and all these things, you can kind of X in or, tweet in some of your thoughts. So he knew who I was, which is kind of weird. And then out of the blue, I get an email from somebody at Jim Rome. Hey, Jim would like to have it on his podcast. I almost fell on the floor. Like, what? Of all the things I've done, that's a big highlight in my life and career, to be able to be on a Jim Rome thing, which is pretty bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jim was always well aware of his surrounding. I didn't know Jim well. Jim and I didn't have a relationship. Once I won, he was cordial that I won, but I got right into the business. I was a little immature at the time. Luckily, I got in at 29 years old and not 22 or 23, where I would have flamed out. And I got in at the right time. And the credit I give to Jim, more so than anything, is he taught me the business of it, because I kind of knew the type of money he was making because we worked in the same company, Premier Radio Networks, for a long period of time. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Art Bell, Phil Hendry. These were giants in the industry. And, these guys were making big money. Doc DeLaura, big money in syndication. And even though I wasn't at that level, when I started, I knew if I was going to get there and survive, I had to make money. You had to do this. You had to grow affiliates. You had to bring in advertisers. You had to keep advertisers. And I think when it's all said and done with Jim Rome, he should have a chapter in the Radio Hall of Fame about not how many radio hosts got their start through him, because a few did, but the way he was able to stay financially relevant for well over 30 years when guys are flaming out now every day.
Yeah, it's not easy to do that. All right, so Raiders, as people know, via my friend Kerry King from Slayer, we have 4 tickets total. I have 2, he has 2 for the Raiders games, and we're on the 50-yard line, 20 some odd rows up, the most expensive tickets you can have. But I'm not necessarily a gigantic Raider fan, and you know way more than I do. So are they going to be any good this year?
They're going to be better. Last year was a disaster. Last year, they had Pete Carroll, they had Chip Kelly, they had some good players, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. Just every play they called, they couldn't block anybody. They couldn't run a play. They couldn't pass protect. Geno Smith, who was probably a decent player coming in, he was just attacked on every play. You were there. You saw it. He didn't even have time to set his feet. Ashton Genty couldn't get back to the line of scrimmage. Even get back to the line of scrimmage, and he played pretty well last year. Imagine if he had an all-pro offensive line. But, I was at practice today. I'm going through practices, 114 degrees. So they're the only team in the NFL, the only team that practices at 7:30 in the morning. There's 32 teams. The Raiders start first to beat the Heat. And even by 8:30, 9 o'clock, it's hot. But Fernando Mendoza is a work in progress. He could start game 1. He won't. They'll go with Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins is much more developed than Fernando with this Clint Kubiak playbook. Fortunately, Max Crosby's back. He was traded. That deal fell apart, thank God. And then, Brian, the Raiders went out and got 7 new starters in the offseason. So there's 22 players playing, 11 on offense and defense before special teams. They got a brand new football team. So they're probably one more draft away, one more free agent, one more big trade away from having a team that I think, and hopefully it starts early this year, but in the next 2 years or 3 years, they should be living in the playoffs the way the Patriots were and the Chiefs were, because there's a core group of guys. I call them the core 4, like the way the Yankees had. Their core 4 is Tyler Linderbaum at center, Fernando Mendoza at quarterback, Brock Bowers at tight end, who's Hercules, and Ashton Genty at running back. With those 4 guys, if this doesn't work, we got a big effing problem, because you can't have a 4 core better than that under contract and young. You better be sitting your ass in the postseason for 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row and taking 1 or 2 shots at a Super Bowl.
I sure hope so. I don't think my pocketbook would agree necessarily in the playoffs, but I just hope for, especially my friends that are big Raider fans, and I'm friends with a few guys who work for the Raiders who are big metalheads, and just for the city too. The city's been so spoiled with the success of the Golden Knights. It would be nice if the Raiders could have a little bit of that as well. So am I correct? You have not seen the new Rush tour yet?
No, because I got canceled out of Dallas and I couldn't make that up. And I'm going to go see him in San Jose. And my buddy Jimmy's got tickets for me in Hollywood, Florida. So I'm going to go there. And then I'm probably going to catch a show along the way. The problem is I can't move once Raider season starts. I can't be on the road on the weekend when there's a game. Tuesday, I interview the head coach, do a head coach show that ends up on TV. So can I grab a random Thursday night and take off and go and see a show in the Midwest or West and come back? Yeah, I can do that. But my window was in the beginning of the tour. I didn't go to LA, which was a mistake. But I'm going to have to get really creative to go see more of this. And then I'm just hoping that Vegas eventually will have a big landing spot for them. So when they've always fell in love with the MGM Grand. We know about other potential ventures out here. When they come to Vegas, my wife knows. Do not make any plans. She won't go. She is not. She loves the Stones. We met at a Stones show. My budget is when she wants to go see the Stones in Europe. That's our trip every year or every other year. We go to Europe to see the Stones. And when Rush comes, that's me and the boys going to see Getty, Alex, and now Annika. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's too bad because I was at those two. I was at the first two shows in Dallas, and I was going to go to all four of them, actually. And of course, they, like you mentioned, they canceled the other two, which is a shame because that venue, Dickies Arena, and actually in Fort Worth, is my favorite arena in the country. It's brand new. It's a beautiful arena. It's only like 12,000 seats. The sidelines are phenomenal. The sound is incredible. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I think I am going to be in San Jose, and even if I'm not there, let me know, because they're good friends with the front of house guy and also the guy who actually mixes them. They're both old school metal dudes that I know pretty well.
That's awesome. And I got a lot of friends too, but you got more in the industry, and it's nice to be able to go to a show and meet a group of people beforehand or meet a front of the house guy. One of my best friends, Tony Cambereri, is a legendary roadie at the Fillmore in the Bay Area for Bill Graham Presents. So over 30 years, going on 35 years, he'd call me throughout our friendship, our fraternity friendship, and say, hey, come on up. There's a show. And the next thing you know, I'm backstage with the band. He's on the lights. I'm in the front of the house, the back of the house. And, you know, it's great because in football, I get to be on the sideline. I was a sideline reporter for the Raiders for many years. You know, get to walk on the field before the game. But you know as good as anybody. When you get that patch and you put it on your pant and go backstage, I just did that for an Alice Cooper show through a mutual friend, and you get that experience before and after the show. It's every kid's dream to go backstage for a rock show, man. And you've gotten a chance to do that many times. It's so good.
Oh yeah, a lot of times it's not very glamorous, but I do consider myself lucky to do that. And the other thing that you mentioned that it's out there now, so we could kind of talk about it, is Rush at Sphere. And I cannot confirm that that's going to happen, but enough people have talked about it, and usually the rumor mill is pretty accurate. So I'm like I said, I cannot confirm it because it's not confirmed 100% yet, but it looks like that's going to happen, which is going to be pretty spectacular.
All right, let's go down that rabbit hole for a minute, if we can.
Sure.
So I've been to the Sphere a bunch. I've been lucky. I've been to Eagles twice, Dead and Company a few times. The U2 shows I thought were iconic. The Wizard of Oz. My wife likes Kenny Chesney. I just went to 2 Kenny Chesney shows with no real impact wanting to go. I walked out of there and said, oh my God, this is great. So here's where I stand with Sphere going forward. I'm a floor guy from here on out. I've been in the suites. Look, if you invite me in the suite and there's an open bar and I got a seat in the suite, I'm going. But I don't want to be in the 2s and 300s because to me, it's like going to a movie. If you want to go see Odyssey and you want to sit in an IMAX and sit in a great seat with a popcorn, great. I don't go to a concert to go to a movie. I go to a concert to get up there. So people are like, well, you got to look up. Oh my God, you got to look up. You got all this around you. So what? I want to see the band. I want to see the eyes of the band. So whenever Rush comes, I'll be on the floor. I'm sure I'll catch a show because I'm going to try to go to most of them in the stands somewhere, maybe the 2s or 300s. But I think the experience for me has always been try to get on Getty's side if you can. If you're on Alex's side, that's great. If you're dead center, who's complaining? But at Sphere, you have room. That's a big floor, Brian, and you got space to go to the restroom, to go to the bar, and come back. So I can't wait to see him on the floor.
Yeah, I have terrible vertigo in my old age here. So the first time I went to Sphere, I sat in the 300s, and I could not sit there. I was freaked out. I was there to see you too. And just and I was with my buddy who's a big fan. I go, I don't want to leave, or I don't want to leave him, by himself. So I went on StubHub at the last minute and got 2 tickets in the 100 level, which is the level right behind where the standing room would be. And we went down there. I didn't know what row it was because I just knew not to be too far up because it's the overhang. But we were like the second row in the seated part, and the band's really close. And yeah, you do got to look up a lot. But every show I've seen, I saw the Eagles there once and U2 3 times. I'm always in that section. That's where I'm going to go. And I've got a bunch of Metallica tickets already, and that's where I'm going to sit. So trust me, if people have any sort of vertigo, I mean, the seats are basically straight down. Like straight down. It's frightening, but it's an amazing place. And anything you see there is going to be incredible.
Anybody who gets an invite to the Sphere and gets a chance to go it's really a gift. So, I've told people this. Once you go see Sphere, it's going to change your life as a concert goer. I remember seeing Pearl Jam, and it was very raw after going to the Sphere for the first time, and it was okay. But I can't go back to just seeing a concert the way it used to be. I just can't. I just saw Sammy, and I love Joe Satriani, and I think they do a great show. I mean, Sammy's voice is still holding up. Satriani's on my Mount Rushmore, so I'll go see him anywhere. And it's raw, and you're there eye level with them, and it's good. But good luck. I tell people, if you haven't been to Sphere and you're going to go see a show there, good luck going back home to Cleveland or Detroit or at San Jose. Imagine going into the Shark Tank and sitting in the 118 section watching a concert after you go to Sphere. It ain't going to work. So when you go here, it's going to change your life, and it will probably be the best show you've ever been to. It should be, if you end up going to a show of a band you really care about.
Yeah, 100%. The first night I went to U2, I texted with Lars because Lars, the Metallica guys and U2 guys are super, super close. And I know Lars was there on opening night. And I said, hey, I'm going to see U2 tonight at Sphere. And he said, oh, you got to let me know what you think. So after the show, he texted me like, what did you think? I go, I need a night to just digest this because I don't really fully understand what I just saw tonight. Just so overwhelming. So the next day we were kind of texting about stuff, and I could tell right then with his excitement for that venue and how he thought, he's a game changer and all these things. I said, they're going to for sure do it there. And thankfully they are. So I'm very much looking forward to those shows.
Now, let me ask you about that, if you don't mind, because living in Vegas, I've lived in Vegas since 96, a little time in LA and the Bay. But this show was very interesting. I saw Metallica when they played the Oakland Coliseum for that AFC Championship game out there. And I was anchoring the pregame show for the Raiders. I had to leave it to get on the air. I saw about 2 or 3 songs, and it was mind-blowing. So when people started talking about the difficulty, I said, look, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be worth it. And they're definitely going to add shows because the demand is going to be so heavy. So what can you tell me about that I could talk about on the air, the demand and how much preparation they're putting into this? Because I know they know it's going to be a big part of their legacy.
I don't know a whole lot about what they're planning in terms of like the show and that, because I don't want to know. I just want to be surprised when I get there. So if you're not in a Sphere, the stage is very small, but all the bands that have played there aren't bands running around and doing a lot of stuff. They're basically just, standing around or moving a little bit. So Metallica's got their own stage they've put together, which is going to be a little larger. They normally are in the round Metallica. So I'm sure they have something that's kind of rounded that's going to go towards the seats where people can stand in the middle of the stage, basically. So that's going to be very different for a Sphere experience. But James will only allow them to do, I think it's 50 shows per year. And that's it. So they can't do more than that. When they were going to do Sphere, they don't want to be a resident band, right? They don't want to be a residency band. So they're like, we'll do 16 shows and that's it. And they're doing 2 completely separate set lists, which means they have to have 2 completely separate shows. And those shows, from what I understand, cost anywhere from, for the screen stuff, anywhere from $8 to $10 to $12 million. So you've got to do that many shows just to cover your expenses, basically. So when they added to 24, I was pretty shocked because I was like, wow, that's a lot of shows for those guys to do. But you're right. The demand was so insane that the band's like, well, let's just do some more. And as you've seen with the Eagles, for example, and there's rumors about U2 doing more shows. I mean, they could add more shows. We'll see. It probably wouldn't be for a little while, but it's going to be a great experience. I'm really, really excited for it.
Let me tell you this about Sphere, which I've been telling to everybody. You cannot play there unless you're great because you'll get exposed. So everybody's like, well, I'm going to wait for my band to go. No. With all due respect, Vince Neil cannot perform there. There are bands that would get exposed, and I'm a huge Stone fan. I don't think it'd be great for Mick. So, and Gwen Stefani pulled it off from all accounts. You have to be at the top of your game vocally to perform at Sphere. That venue will take any mistake you make and magnify it, and you'll get exposed. I don't ever want to see Sphere get to the point where everybody's begging to play. Every band saying, I want to come back and do a tribute show. No Leonard Skinner. No, you can't do it. No one can play there unless they're iconic. And Metallica is iconic. So I wonder when they're going to get to the point, Brian, where they're going to have to say time out. Everybody who's come through, you've had your chance. You've played more than once. You're aging out. And then we're looking at younger bands, and me and you can go down this rabbit hole. I don't see a lot of great, iconic younger bands who are ready to play there. So I wonder how they're going to fill the Sphere in years to come when some of these iconic bands are not going to play there anymore.
Yeah, you never know. The one good thing about Sphere is they're very smart in who they book, and you've got to have a show. You've got to have something that makes it interesting to go there and interesting for people who like the Sphere to go. Because if you're just going to play a show and not have a lot of crazy graphics and stuff, it doesn't make any sense. But there's all these other things. There's all these other types of music that, like, I didn't see Illenium. I'm not a guy that's into all that EDM stuff, but apparently the shows are just spectacular. And, there's a lot of artists. I mean, I could see Tiesto doing something there, any of those guys. So I don't think there'll be a lack of bands moving forward. I mean, at some point you could be right that all the bigger bands have aged out, and we'll just have to see. But for now, it's in its prime, and I'm just going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed Foo Fighters over the years because I had a big void as we started with Geddy and Rush. There was a massive void in my life when Rush went away. I mean, massive, to the point where it was like, whoa. And now, Brian, I'm going through a stage in my life where I'm not going to go see bands anymore. I'm going to stop because I saw them in their prime. And I said, Billy Joel, I've seen Billy Joel a lot being from New York. And man, his shows are unbelievable and they connect to my DNA. But I don't have to see Billy Joel again. If it's his final tour and final show, I've seen McCartney. I can't even count how many times. Elton John just played a private Raider show that I got a chance to see, which was spectacular. Would I go see Elton one more time at Allegiant or somewhere else? Probably not. So there's a bunch of bands that I'm checking out and saying goodbye to. And I know I don't have the funnel brewing of a lot of younger bands that I want to see. So I'm in this weird space I might need you to help me get through over the next 5 to 10 years.
I can do that. I was at that Elton John thing too, and that was unbelievable. He played an hour and a half to 2,000 people, whatever it was, and he was incredible. I didn't know what to expect, but he was phenomenal. But anyway, we could sit here and talk all day, but unfortunately, my podcast guys only limit how long we can do it. So I want to thank you so much for doing this. I'm sure we'll do this again at some point. And thanks again, man. That was awesome.
Next time I want to interview you on your magnificent career. I hope to see you out here soon, either at a sporting event or a concert. Thanks for having me on, my friend.
All right, there you have it. Fun show wrapping up the great song Spirit of Radio by Rush. Thanks to JT the Brick for coming on and talking about his love of Rush. As always, Jay Ruston talking about production, Mr. Martin Popoff, Lizzie Borden with our theme song, and the producer and the man who started this whole show, Mr. Christian Blatt. Thank you, and we will talk to you guys next episode.
100!
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney+. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Yeah! Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney+.
It will be an adventure for the whole family.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT Work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT Work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting Work Mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, 0 tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.